good friends all the time, seeking retribution. We got winning on our mind. We've got to cross the line.
West Tigers Faithful, episode 16. I think number 16 in the grand final of 2005 for the West Tigers was Bryce Gibbs. He's a fat white man. I know another fat white man. He's with me right now, and he's not sick anymore. His name's Joe McCord. How are you, mate?
Oh, I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good.
Fat white man.
I kid. You're in great nick. And people can't see you anyway, so it doesn't matter. Mate, you're gone after what was, besides a couple of wins through the season, probably the biggest week in West Tigers history since we started this podcast.
Yeah. Well, you can't time the unfortunate health events. They always happen at the worst moment. It was my birthday last Monday. That's when it all started. So I had a great birthday week.
Happy birthday, my guy.
Yes, thank you. Turned 38.
Oh yeah, Cameron. Yeah, you're in like your last year of football if you were Cameron Smith.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
What'd you get?
I got a PlayStation 5 game, some underpants. Went to Kevin Mitchell live at the Bright Side. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a frontman from Jebediah, aka Bob.
Oh, yeah. I know Jebediah.
Yeah, and he was cool. Met him, got a photo with him. That's pretty cool.
Nice.
Got a vinyl of his as well. So no, sorry.
What about the Christmas present that arrived in the form of one Terrell May?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk about that. Mate, like when this whole thing started, we were talking about, what do we think the likelihood of it happening was? And I said, I think we will. And we did.
You did.
Let's keep that manifestation dream going with today's awesome episode. People are going to love this one. It's going to be great.
I think they will. I just want to get your thoughts on a few things simply because I haven't really spoken to you about it. Do you think there's any more recruiting to be done for 2025 or is it simply now down to just shelling players?
I think Richo's an opportunistic CEO. I don't think he'll be like super active, but like, if another Terrell May situation repeats itself, like he will participate in the player market when it makes sense to, particularly because those sort of opportunities also sometimes provide the opportunity to move players that you want moved. You might be able to do a little bit of horse trading with a team that wants to shed like a higher value player that they don't necessarily see the same value, and maybe a team like us who needs spots can trade them a lower value player that might do a job for them, like a Brent Naden type player, for somebody who might do more of a job for us, save them some money. Richo knows what he's doing. He's a clever clogs. But no, I mean, aside from, I still think we will see the back of a couple of players, but I think that the guys that are going to take those spots are already at the club.
Very good. Fenua Bole, 2-year extension. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was pretty cool, eh?
Nice. That's all that has to be.
He looks in good nick. I saw the photos from him coming back. He's probably honestly the most in shape guy in the club by the looks of it, like physically. Like, I mean, that's like, got a bit of size about him. Like obviously Galvin's triathlete fit, but like
yes,
Volley looks like a freaking rig and a half to me.
Yeah. I think the boys are working pretty hard through preseason. I know obviously it's quite cliche, but There was an article today by Dan Walsh in the Morning Herald, and there were multiple players that were saying, like Royce Hunt and Appy Coruscant included, saying this was the toughest preseason they've ever done. So, given Michael Maguire's preseasons that Appy would have experienced, right when Madge was an absolute head case, I guess that bodes well. We need these blokes fit, mentally. How do you say? Mentally strong.
Yeah, you got to create some toughness and some resilience in this playing group.
Yes.
One thing that I was saying to the boys in the Discord server is that we should have sent these guys over to Tiger Muay Thai in Phuket, Thailand, and like put them through the ringer with those Dagestani wrestlers. I reckon that's what they need.
I agree, mate. I agree. I can't believe we haven't touched on it. We had a new jersey come out today. We've got a new major sponsor. We have a new sternum sponsor. Your thoughts?
I like the jersey design. Yeah, the branding doesn't seem like it's been very well placed. It almost feels like it was rushed. Didn't really obviously the jersey designs were commissioned before we had the sponsor, I think. And you can kind of tell somebody in the disco said it looks like they're wearing like a bib.
Yeah, marathon bib. Thanks, Dennis.
But the jerseys look freaking great. I think that they're our best jerseys I've seen in a very long time. Like they're beautiful jerseys, both of them.
I just don't know how I feel about, I suppose you call them stripes, that obviously hark back to 05, which we obviously needed to do. It's been 20 years, but yeah, I don't know. It just feels like it complicates it a little bit. I like the honeycomb up the side, and I love the white cuffs and the white collar. I think the V's strong. I don't mind the placement of the Zurich.
I like the shade of gold that they've got on the gold one. I don't think it's the same shitty orange that they usually use. It looks more like the traditional Balmain gold.
Yeah, I think it's the best gold that they've had in a little while. So I agree with you there. I actually think, and it hurts me to say this as a West boy, the Balmain jersey looks much better.
Yeah, I agree. It does. It doesn't usually though. The orange ones looked like shit the last few years. The black one's been the better one, but the orange one looks the goods this year.
Yeah, I agree. Look, if they can integrate the sponsor similar to what they did with Proton a few years back, in 06, we had the logo and their typeface, and then we switched to a more jersey-friendly typeface and removed the logo. I think we might be on a winner. I'm glad that they've kept the V. Both Balmain and West had Vs. That's how it should be. Again, I just need to see more of it and get a good look at it in person before I make a decision. But look, anything that doesn't have Brighton's written across it is a win. and well done Shane Richardson for executing the biggest sponsorship deal in West Tigers history.
Yeah, I saw it in the article today that it's they're the NRLW sponsor as well. So, that's a little bit of it probably makes it a little bit of like, how do you put it, creative publicity, because he's probably asked the biggest deal ever, but like they've got both major sponsorships. So yeah. Of course it is. But I don't know. I heard some rumors about the amount. They didn't put it in the news article, like the amount. They won't publicize it, but I heard it was pretty big.
Yeah, Dean Ritchie reported 850K first year, but I do believe it goes up. So
yeah, that tracks with what I know. I think that the last year the NRL Brightons were trying to get out of the major sponsorship the whole time that Lee was there at the club, and they were trying to flog the NRL major sponsorship for $500,000. So if they've done 850K, then they've done well, because there's no way the NRLW is 350K.
I agree. That's good business. All right. Do you want to kick into the guts of this episode, and I'll introduce what's about to go down?
Before you do, I do have one question. So, who's left to come back aside from Jerome?
Our great friend John Bateman.
Is that it? Just him and
Sania Taruva as well is
and Terrell. So it's the touring players that'll have to come back, eh?
Yeah, that's right. Effectively, John's not that important these days, but yeah, they're the big guys, the big guns.
Just the ones that went to England, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
ones up to England. Draw conversation just quickly. As a man that lives in Brisbane, you have a little bit of a different approach to this draw. How do you find it?
I love it.
Yeah, I was going to say it works for you, eh?
Yeah, dude. I think we're playing the Gold Coast up here. We're playing Redcliffe up here at KO, which I've not we haven't played at KO yet. So this is the first time the Tigers will be playing at KO. Just cool. And then we're playing a Suncorp against the Broncos, and then we're playing who are we playing in Magic Round?
We got the Dragons on a Saturday night.
That's definitely a better Magic Round fixture than what we had last year. Bloody hell. Taking a home game to Suncorp to play the Dolphins last year. No, I like it from that perspective. Aside from the travel, it's a good draw, but geez, they really nailed us with the travel.
They nailed us with the travel, but I actually think because Richardson advocated so hard for a family friendly draw, lots of Sunday arvos and Saturdays, that I reckon the NRL basically said, all right, well, you can have minimum 5-day turnarounds. So we're gonna make you travel. That's the biggest part of this draw. I don't think it's a hard draw necessarily, but every single out of Sydney team we play at their home ground, so that could hurt us. Melbourne in Melbourne and Queensland teams, and we play NZ in NZ, so something to consider. Canberra away as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's if you look at the Sydney fixtures, like the Tigers versus Sydney teams fixtures, like the ones that we're playing at the like key, the venues, New South Wales venues, they're all pretty winnable games. And the ones that are the challenging games we're taking to the suburban venues. So it's a little bit clever from that perspective.
Well, we've got the Sharks at Leichhardt.
Yeah.
We've got the Titans at Leichhardt and the Cowboys at Leichhardt in what I assume will be the 2005 lunch and celebration.
I already feel like paranoid about that.
Yeah, that's Tommy Radonica's five.
Yes, exactly.
I think the Combank games are the best ones.
Yeah.
So we've got Para twice at Combank, home and away. We've got the Panthers twice at Combank, home and away. We've got the Dogs. I think that might be it. That's pretty good, I reckon. They're going to be some unreal games. I would anticipate sellouts in a lot of those. I know it's a big stadium, but the Jerome Luai Tigers to Panthers to Tigers story is a big thing. The Dogs are one of the best supported clubs in the entire comp. If both teams are going well, I reckon it'll sell out. Easter Monday's always a sellout. Like they've done really good there. What do you reckon?
If the Tigers are even like in with a shot, they'll sell out.
I agree.
All 5 of those games will sell out. If the Tigers are like, running last, the wheels are going to fall off the fan base pretty hard in 2025.
Yeah, I think so. But that said, we're not affiliated with West Tigers, but I'm going to buy a membership, and I hope everybody else does too. Turn a corner. There's no Leisure Japan Telus or Justin Pascoe anymore.
I've never had a good enough reason to buy one of those away memberships before, but maybe I will this time because there's plenty of opportunities for me to go to games.
And we got a bloody primetime slot at Magic Round as well. Like, when does that ever happen? Normally we get the Sunday 6 o'clock spot. So Shane Richardson obviously has
he's got pull.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he's got a massive Rolodex. So
He sure does.
It helps. All right, we've been teasing this for a while. This is basically going to be our free agency special. So basically how this works is that I'm going to steal this idea that I got from a football production house, Tifo Football. They're bankrolled by The Athletic and the New York Times. And what they do is that they identify holes in a team or squad that need filling, and using sort of data, eye test analysis, and no rumor or anything like that, they come up with who they think will fit the bill. Now, obviously, in European football and so forth, there's not really many cash restrictions the way there are in the NRL. They have financial fair play and profit and sustainability rules, but they don't have an NRL salary cap. So to go one step further, what Mac and I are going to do is this: totally separate. We have our own lists. We aren't going to sell anybody that is on contract besides Jaden Sullivan and John Bateman. They're gone. That's implied. We're going to assume that we're going to pay around $500,000 to see the back of both of them off the cap. But what we're going to do is that we're going to look at the off-contract players, determine which players we would either sign, re-sign rather, release, or promote to the top 30 from a development or train and trial contract. And then we're going to work out how much cap we have left and the players that we're going to sign. So in order to do that, I went through this week and I basically gave a valuation for every single player, pretty much based off the NRL Rich 100, some work in terms of looking back from reliable resources in the press, and additionally, a little bit from Zero Tackle. So shout out to all sources. So if anybody disagrees with my valuations, they are more than welcome to pick a fight with me, but I'm pretty sure they're pretty good. Now, once we have determined how much money is in the cap after we have re-signed the players at the value that we determine, because we're going to determine a value for those players. Mac doesn't know what valuation I'm placing hypothetically on Alex Seyfarth, and I do not know what he's got planned. He may well let Alex go completely. What we will then do is identify the positions we think the Tigers need to fill and the holes in their squad. We will then identify a short list of players and our ideal picks, how much we'd pay them, and then have a look at what those teams might look like for 2026. In line with what I spoke about earlier around Tifo's sensible transfers, we're not looking at rumours or speculation. There's nothing going on anyway in terms of rumours at the moment, because I don't think the club's focused on 2026 at the minute. But effectively, we're going to try as best we can to play general manager, play God a little bit, and identify what we think the club should look at moving forward. Anything from you, Mr. McCord?
Oh, on with the show.
Excellent. What I might do to start, and people might actually forget these things, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just read out the values of the players as follows. Okay. Now, before we start, minimum wage goes up to $140K in 2026. It goes up incrementally $5,000 until 2027, where it stops at $145K. So, in alphabetical order based on surname, Jack Bird, $400,000. Jareem Buller, $690,000. Talon De Silva earns considerably less with $250,000. Latu Finu, $450,000. Samuela, $400,000. Their older brother, Sione Finu, is going to take a pay cut, $200,000. We've got him signing on for a 2-year deal. I'm going to assume that that's what it is. Lachlan Galvin, I believe, is on $350,000 a year. Royce Hunt, $50K more at $400,000. Api Coruscant, $650,000. The Lauliti brothers, Kit and Luke, both on minimum wage at $140,000 each. Those salaries pale in comparison to Jerome Luai's hefty $1.2 million salary. Dean Ritchie reported that Hiamasi Makasini signed a $1 million contract upon his retention at West Tigers. I've got him earmarked at $450,000 first season in the top 30. Terrell May signed a 3-year, $2 million deal. That averages out at $665,000. Justin Olam has a $600,000 wage, but has $475,000 of that paid by the West Tigers, the rest by the Storm. I've got Fanua Bole's latest contract coming in at $500,000 a season. Anybody who thinks otherwise, Mac, I know you do, fight me. Solomone Sakuru, $140,000, that's minimum wage. Jarrell Skelton was rumoured to sign on for $230,000, which I think is exceptional value. Stafford Toa, I believe, has signed on at $300,000. Sania Taruva has signed on at $435,000. And Alex Twal finally signs at $400,000. We have 10 spots left to fill. Now, these do not include any options that I'm talking about. Dave Clemmer, I'm talking about Tony Suka. The maths are as follows. The total salary cap for 2026 is $11,550,000. The West Tigers have spent $9,215,000 of that and have $2,335,000 remaining. That is an average wage of $233,000 for those remaining spots. Okay, that's where we're at. Now, there is a long-term player allowance that's about $300K. So, Mac, I apologize if you haven't included that. There's also a $100,000 car allowance, but I don't really include that. So,
And no TPAs because we don't know anything about TPAs.
that's right. We don't know anything about TPAs either. So, again, just to recap, we have approximately $2.3 million to spend on 10 players. That's an average wage of $233,000. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to look at the off-contract player pool. Mac, you have the floor. You tell me who you're keeping, who you're saying goodbye, and who you are saying goodbye to.
Okay. So for the interest of like not going to outlandish with this whole thing, I didn't cut anybody, but I do think we will, right? So like I think that it's very likely that to balance this salary cap, one of the players that are on a little bit of coin that's in the current 22 that you've got as signed for 2026, I think we'll lose one of them. I don't know who it will be because none of them stand out. But I feel like we will, it might be Twal or something like that. Like somebody who's like just earning just enough to like, the same reason we moved on offer a couple of years ago. Like it didn't seem like that crazy smart of a call, but I think we will. But I didn't do that here. So the players that I re-signed from our off-contract player pool are Alex Seyfarth, and I valued him at 320. So of the 10 players that I signed, he was the second highest paid of all of them.
Nice. Just tell me who you've re-signed and who you've cut, and then I'll give you mine.
Well, I cut everybody except for Seyfarth and Staines.
You kept Staines.
Yeah, I think Staines' value for money and his utility value as an outside back makes him probably like a very smart keep. Like if I looked at the depth of our roster and like I feel like that we really were lacking kind of without Staines. I felt like we were lacking depth on the outside backs. Like it's very quickly goes into our developmental player pool, very quickly goes into players that don't have any NRL experience. I thought Staines started to look like he was capable of doing a job at center, which surprised me. He obviously can cover fullback pretty well. Like I think he's probably played some of his best first grade at fullback, and obviously he can do a job on the wing. He's got that built-in combo with Luai. I don't dislike him as a re-signing. I only valued him at 250K. So I don't, I think that's pretty good business if you look at what else is available out there as an outside back signing.
How much did you sign him on?
Beg your pardon?
How much did you re-sign Charlie for?
250.
Okay, nice. So just to recap, you have gotten rid of the following players: Adam Dewey, Brandon Tumeth, Brent Naden, David Clemmer, Josh Folletti, Alex Lobb, Solomon Afar-Tape, Ruben Porter, and Will Craig, I'm assuming, are not in your top 30?
Correct.
Okay. What Justin Matamua, you've also let go. Okay. I want to talk to you about Tony Suka. Did you take up his club option?
No.
Okay. What about two youngsters, one of which is on a development deal and the other is on a train and trial, Tim Johansson and Heath Mason? Did you give either of those boys upgrades?
Yeah, I signed both of them. I signed Johansson to a $180,000 deal, and I signed Mason to a $200,000 deal.
Well, you threw a bit of cash at them. Very nice. Okay, so just with those internal promotions and re-signings, you would be sitting at 25 spots filled, 5 remaining, correct?
Yeah, you had Sione Finu in your main list, but in the Discord when you sent me the list, he wasn't in it. So Sione is somebody who I also actually signed.
My apologies. What did you value him at?
220.
Nice. Okay, our valuations aren't too far apart there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So therefore you have 4 spots left to fill.
I have so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players I haven't named there. So there's 5.
Excellent. Okay, I am going to run you through mine. I
Yeah.
did something similar in the sense of I re-signed Alex Seyfarth. He's the most expensive retention. I didn't have him at 320. I had him at 400K, but I don't anticipate that the club will go any higher than that. Furthermore, because this bloke has never had a long-term deal, he's only ever signed, I think the longest deal he ever signed was a 2-year deal. I reckon the Tigers might say, oh, here's 300K a year for 3 years if you sign tomorrow. And I reckon he might take it. So that value could swing. There's 2 players that were in the top 30 that I am keeping, one of which is Justin Matamua. I've got him re-signing at 200K. I just think I've been critical of him, but at the same time, it sounds like his conditioning wasn't up to speed. Shane Richardson name dropping him makes me think that they have been impressed with him and maybe they think that he is going to turn a corner. So based on recent times, I would be willing to give him that, and it would only be a couple of years, and it wouldn't really hurt the club. At worst, he's quite a good reserve grader. I actually took up Suka's option. I just think he's a good guy to have in the squad. He works hard. He's a local junior. You could do far worse than throwing him a minimum wage deal and keeping him around. He's only going to improve, and as we've always seen, he plays to the grade that he's at. So you're called upon to play first grade. I think he'll do a job. Tim Johansson and Heath Mason are 2 guys I did upgrade, but I've just got them on 2-year deals at minimum wage. I anticipate, while Johansson is probably worth more, I do think that is probably what the club will offer, and I hope that he'll take it. Adam, wherever you are, don't settle for less. But but that's sort of where I'm at. So just quickly, by my count, I personally have $1,315,000 remaining for 4 players. That's an average wage of $273,000 per player. Where are you at?
Yeah, so like I've got 5 players left to sign, and I had 1.065.
Okay, so a little bit less. One thing that I want to talk about is the fact that there will be likely, I mean, I hope so in the event of Lachlan Galvin, but upgrades and extensions to Lachlan Galvin and Samuela Fainu. I actually accounted for that in my salary cap. Did you?
No.
Okay. So you're going to leave Lock on the amount of money that he's currently on.
Yeah, I would just try to re-sign him with a good deal for 2020, like whenever his first contract is. I don't feel like that our salary cap's in a position where we can like front load him, bring his salary forward at all. I think that our salary cap's too messy to do that. Where it might be the year that we actually have to put him on a fair amount of coin is very different though, because at that time, we might even be looking at moving off of Appy. Talon might be ready to play first grade as a starter. Like there's a lot that can happen between now and then. But right now, I don't think that there's room in the salary cap to just throw money at him when he's not contractually obligated to it. I don't think it also will matter that much to him, because as long as the contract that we can sign him to as soon as we can sign him is lucrative enough for when he actually starts to get paid, it won't matter.
Fair enough, mate. Well, I did upgrade Lockie. I've got it. I'm giving him a 200 grand pay rise, so I'm taking him from $350,000 to $550,000. I would anticipate that deal goes up further as time goes on. And furthermore, I'm going to give Sam Weller a $100,000 top up. So just for reference, for those final 4 spots that I have approximately $1 million left to spend. You, on the other hand, I believe you have a mil and how much?
1.065, but 5 players.
Okay. All right. So we're pretty much in the same spot. Now, that means we're going to have to be pretty cost savvy or move some things around, which I'm excited about. For reference to the listeners, I have no idea what Joe's got in mind for what players or positions he wants to fill, but I'm going to find that out now. Mac, don't give me your players yet. Identify the positions or the parts of the field that we need to improve on?
I signed three back rowers. I signed one extraordinarily versatile but very young and completely outlandish outside back utility. And I signed a very experienced NRL utility that plays mostly in the halves, dummy half, can pinch hit at lock.
I like it. Okay. For reference, I've shopped on two back rowers as I kept Suka, so therefore I would have needed to shop for a third if I got rid of him. I think that our depth chart in the back row is atrocious. You have Samuela and Seafarth, both who started the season last year in the middle, so they're still developing in the position. You've got Jack Bird there, that's probably the pinch hitter. He doesn't inspire me very much. And then beyond that, you've got Tony Suka and Ruben Porter, both of which are very untested at first grade level and have questions over their ability. So I think that we need to prop up the how do you say, the depth chart there. I have spot 29 for mine as an outside back. I'll get to who and what later. Spoilers, there is next to nothing on the market. And finally, spot 30, I'm going to give to a middle forward. But who and what that is, I'm not even sure. So we'll wait and see. Mac, did you have a short list or did you just zero in on a couple of players for your back rowers?
I ended up just taking what I think I can afford, to be honest. I recognized it as a need. I recognized that we needed at least one experienced NRL back rower, and he's who took the lion's share of the cap that I had remaining. He's the only player that I ended up paying more than Safer. And the other two back rowers that I signed were essentially rookies.
Beautiful. All right. Reveal your picks. Maybe go from lowest salary to highest.
Yeah, so I am giving top 30 deals to two West Tigers juniors that I don't think you will agree with the logic of. But essentially, from my perspective, I'm just moving on from existing top 30 players that are on development and moving on to these two young, talented players that I think, have a much better chance of being and are already young. One of them is Archie Duncombe.
Shock horror.
I gave Archie Duncombe a top 30 deal, 1 year, 2026. I feel like, I just don't know. I just feel like he's going to play in NRL young. I feel like he's got the right stuff. I feel like when you're talking about position 29 and 30, you can have players like this in the roster. Paying him min wage, but I'm definitely not, making the mistake of giving him like a 2 or 3 year top 30 deal like we've done with some of these other juniors. It's literally like a 1 year. The other rookie that I'm upgrading to top 30, I feel like this is actually going to happen, Reedie. I just think that it'll happen in a roundabout way after a little while throughout the season and probably will result in us having to bloodlet somebody from the roster. But Logan Brooks, I think that the thing with Logan Brooks that's going to make him worthy of a top 30 spot very quickly is his utility value. He can play fullback, 5'8", and with that skill set could easily play on the wing and in the centers. There's not really any other archetype of that kind of player in our entire club. So as long as he progresses, has a good off-season and hits the ground running in juniors and progresses through the juniors, I think that utility value and like just what he brings to the table as a player is just too unique for this club. We don't really have anybody like him at the club. And if we hit on a player like that, then what that does to the roster is like, if he can be a 19-year-old that hits first grade, what that does for the roster is massive. If he becomes, a KO Weeks level NRL player or better, it's just a massive, massive boon for our roster. The next one that I have is a guy who there's been a lot of rumors about us potentially signing over the last 12 months that hasn't eventuated yet, but he is off contract again, and that's Harrison Hassett. I think Harrison Hassett's a pretty good number 27 spot on a roster. I think that he has NRL potential. I think at most other clubs he probably would have played a lot of NRL by now. He's a defensive kind of player. He's going to be at the right age come 2026. He's come up through a system that develops back rows very, very well. For those who don't know, he's Penrith reserve grade back rower and a very good one, very highly regarded. And yeah, he's somebody that I signed for 200,000. The second last player on the list, sorry, is Drew Hutchison.
Huh.
I think that when we let go of Sullivan, I think that we are really lacking in utility halves cover. We've got essentially Latu Fainu and nothing. So Drew Hutchison is a plus utility player when it comes to NRL halves. He's somebody who can play a lot of positions. He's played a lot of center over the years at the Roosters and did a decent job. 6, 7, 9, 13, very good utility player. Just a good cog in the wheel on a roster like ours, I think. He's like an upgraded version of Caesar in terms of his utility value. The guy that I spent the most coin on is Brodie Jones. I signed Brodie Jones as our, I guess I wouldn't say like premium, but I actually think Brodie Jones had a really good 2024. He had some cracking games for the Knights. They only re-signed him for 1 year. He was off contract and they only gave him a 1-year extension. So they're obviously kicking the can down the road on the guy. He's a good age. I reckon if he was a West Tiger, he'd be a plug and play starting back rower at this club.
You think he's better than Alex Seyfarth?
Yeah.
And you'd start him on that right edge, I assume?
Yeah.
Very nice. My question to you, I guess, is more about depth. I mean, with your cup side. So, like, would you run, like, what does that spine look like given that you've got Brooks, you've got Mason, and you've got Hutcho there, all sort of in and around that? Jack Bird might be playing reserve grade next year. This is a no-notice question, but have you got any sort of idea on how you would sort of develop those young guys in certain positions?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Brooks is going to start off in the SG ball team, and he'll play the whole SG ball season probably. He should play flag pretty quickly, and if he dominates flag, he'll play New South Wales Cup by about halfway through the season. And that's a pretty normal curve for a kid like him, I think. As far as 2026 goes, I would very much hope that he's the starting fullback in New South Wales Cup well entrenched. If he's not, then bad signing. But I'm also, as I said, I don't think necessarily that if I was in Richo's position right now, I probably wouldn't sign Brooks. I just think that he will. I think that given there's going to be so much flux in the roster over the next 6 months, there's so many players in the roster that need to move on, and there's still players in the 20 named players that we've got here locked in that I think are going to go. I think Sakuru could very easily be gone. Ketlali could very easily be gone. There's room for us to move players like Brooks and Duncan into those spots if we do move on from those guys, and obviously move on the players that we feel like we need to, like Sullivan and Bateman. I think Hutchison is probably in the top 17, to be honest. I think Hutchison is probably going to be like, if he's in this team in 2026, probably the 14. I think he just offers way too much utility value not to be, and his experience as well. So I think, unless Latu Finu has a massive 2025 and makes his case undeniable, he would probably still be a reserve grader in 2026.
What is your plan for Jack Bird?
So I think Jack Bird 2025 is probably the utility guy. Like in this spreadsheet, he's got a U next to his name, is the only player that does. So yeah, that's kind of it. The other thing is that I think that by re-signing Staines, and progressing with Logan Brooks, keeping Star around, signing Taruba, and with Sakura still on this roster, I think that there's room to potentially, and I've said this before, I think there's room for like by 2026 for Skelton to potentially become a forward. I think that's entirely viable. I think if Lolalei and Marcassini, both progress well, he won't have much of a choice. So if he wants to play NRL, that's where he'll play. I think that if Lolalei and Marcassini progress, they'll get first crack at any opportunities they earn. Skelton's not going to block their development. So I can totally see Skelton transitioning to the back row. Maybe not starting back row at first, at least, but a bench player, like a bench forward, cover back utility type player, like a Nakawala kind of player.
Okay.
But yeah,
I like it, mate. Thank you for sharing your insights. So just to recap, the external players that you are signing are Logan Brooks, Archie Duncan, Brodie Jones, and Drew Hutchison.
And Harrison Hassett. My apologies
to Harrison. I will tell you, as a reminder, I did buy 2 back rowers, and Brodie Jones and Harrison Hassett were on my shortlist, but I didn't sign them. I opted for something a little bit different. I think that Brodie is a little bit more of the terrier type, and I went for a little bit more attacking flair. I also had a guy by the name of Billy Burns, who was Cronulla via Penrith. I don't mind him. He's a pretty solid back rower and a guy that could do a job. But again, when I was thinking about attacking flair, I opted for someone different. So the first one that I effectively filled was just a rookie back rower, potentially stuck behind a few players at their current club that might benefit from coming with us. Their floor is effectively just a solid first grader, but they might develop into something half decent. Harrison was my second option, but my first option for that was Dylan Egan from the Dragons. For those that don't know Dylan, he is around a similar size to Ben Hunt. He was actually leading the race to play on the left edge, I believe, for the Dragons until they signed Luciano Leilua and Raymond Fatala-Mariner in quick succession. But I like the look of him. I went a little bit more statistical. He played a full season of Cup this year, so 24 games and scored 7 tries. He had 11 line breaks, which indicates he was getting good ball, but also running decent lines. He only threw a handful of offloads. But the biggest thing with Dylan is the fact that he's only 20 years of age. He was tackling at an efficiency of 95.7%. Super impressive, and a guy that I would be throwing a $200,000 contract to. Nothing too expensive. I think that we would have to pay a little bit more than minimum wage to get him out of Wollongong. But again, that's a guy that I'd look at. He's a hard-working back rower, defensively excellent. He's only going to get better and has the attitude to improve himself every single day. I just think that behind guys like obviously Leilua and Sua, Jacob Halanahu, who is effectively New South Wales' answer to David Fafita, Cyrus Stanley Trail as well, and Raymond Fatala-Mariner, that Dylan, I don't think, will be prioritised at free agency by the Dragons. And he's a guy that I would pick up. A guy who is not as defensively sound, but is an absolute attacking powerhouse. And my number one pick and my number one free agency target for the West Tigers across 2025 leading into 2026 is a fella by the name of Simi Sasangi, who once played for the Newcastle Knights, but now plays for the Canberra Raiders. Now, similar to Dylan, there's a few players in front of Simi. Obviously, Zach Hosking, Hudson Young. They've just signed the English back rower Matty Nicholson from Warrington. So I think there's an opportunity to go after Simi, who interestingly has a first name of Nathaniel, but similar to Siwa Wong, has given himself the nickname and he's run with it. Think Bud Sullivan as well. I'm really high on this guy. He played a handful of first grade games, and while he wasn't up to it defensively, as I mentioned, some of his cup stats are off the charts. He played 16 games in cup last year. He scored 9 tries as a back rower. He had 16 line breaks, 1 line break a game with 1 line break assist. He had 11 offloads in 16 games, outlining his want and desire to pass the ball. The tackle efficiency percentage, as I mentioned, it's not great at 86.7%, but I think he's a guy that you can probably run in jersey 17. And if you need a point of difference on that right edge that Alex Seifert doesn't give you, you can run with Simi and he's going to find your points. As I said, he breaks the line at will. He's got amazing meters per carry. Like his carry on average, I think he's up around 10 meters, breaks tackles at will, can offload as well. I just think he's a really, really good guy to pursue. I would go a little bit higher for him than I would Dylan. I would pay him $300,000. But again, I think it's a smart signing. Again, obviously, you worry about his defense, but you're not paying him to do that. You're paying him to be a difference maker at minute 55, for example, to try and change the game, swing momentum. And again, I think he can do that on that right edge, and I would be excited about that. Look, outside backs, I picked one. The short list is very, very small. There isn't much to talk about at all in terms of players on the market. A player that I do like is Matty Ashton. He played for England against Samoa and he looks excellent. He's tall, he's fast, he can score a try, but he's locked up for an absurd amount of time. And a lot of these English guys don't come cheap. And I don't have heaps of money to spend. 2 guys that I looked at were Robert Darby of the Cowboys and Sam Stonestreet of the Sharks. I don't mind Rob. He's that typical sort of gangly, big winger. He's great out of yardage. He's young. He can do some freakish things. He's a big body. He can jump. So I've always been excited by him, but I think that he'll probably come into contention for the Cowboys next year. He's also a PNG native, so I'm sure he'll want to stay up north. Sam Stonestreet actually has a tie to the West Magpies. His grandfather used to play for them. He's one of these guys at the Sharks, similar to Kyle Idor, like he was for a little while, and Daniel Atkinson, and even Liam Eisen, in the sense that he is ready for first grade now and has been for a little while, but their squad is just so good and so deep that he just doesn't get a run. He's lightning quick. He's only going to get bigger and stronger. And he's somebody that I would really, really like. And again, he's got that tie to the club. The other guy that I do have that was my pick, again, I spoke about it last week in terms of a cultural perspective. I don't agree with it, but as a footballer, he's the best thing we could have on the market. And Terrell May is at the club. It's his brother, Taylor. I don't think he's going to come absurdly expensive from his time in relative obscurity. Again, I do not condone what he's done. It's before the courts or what he is alleged to have done. But ultimately, given the connection with a lot of Penrith players at the club and the pitch to his brother, I would anticipate that we may well see him. I have left spot 30 open. I would either give it to a trainer and trialist or a youngster that absolutely burns the house down over preseason. But if there's anybody that I would look at, I'd be looking at a guy like Preston Rickey from Penrith just to fill that, just a solid cup forward, gets called up, does his job. Good culture guy, good trainer. That's the kind of guy I'd be looking at for spot 30. But if a youngster or a trainer and trialist jumps out of the ground, that's who I'd be giving that contract to. So again, to recap, Dylan Egan, $200,000, Simi Sasangi, $300,000, and Taylor May 350. Mac, your thoughts?
That's like when you're in like primary school and like you're playing like, a pew pew game, like pretending to have guns, and then the dude's just like, oh, I have a bazooka. That's what you just did with Taylor May.
Mate, it's like there's him, like in terms of a person, he's a shocking person. And again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done off field. But as a footballer,
Oh, he's a weapon, man. He's a
now
great weapon.
I'm not one of these people that will say, oh my God, we have to sign him at all costs. But I'm also not one of these people that says, oh, we have to sign him, forget about culture. I think that, once his court date runs his course and he's sentenced and things are looked at, that it is worth a chat. And again, if I'm looking at this purely from a roster perspective, again, not a cultural perspective, I don't condone anything that he's done. Then I think it might, I wouldn't mind it. That said, I could deal with a Stone Street or a Derby as well. You just have to shuffle the deck chairs a little bit, but I do think we need a centre more than anything.
I don't think Stone Street will come cheap, eh?
You don't think so?
No, I reckon like he's going to play for the Sharks a lot this next season. I wouldn't be surprised if he like actually fights his way into the team.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, Katoa or Mulatalo is outside of Toto, I think the best winger in the comp.
yeah, but the problem with both those guys is they're both paid a fortune.
That's true.
So like for a club like the Sharks, like they're the sort of contracts that you can easily see like if Stone Street's just like banging the house down, which he seems to constantly be doing, they start to like draw a circle around guys like Katoa and go, maybe we can move on to Stone Street and save $200,000-300,000 a year. And Katoa is the sort of player that could get full freight from almost any club. So like I think Stone Street's next contract will be a $400,000 a year contract.
Yeah, wow. Okay. That actually might be what it takes to get him out of Cronulla.
I think so, man. I think that's what they'll end up paying him. I think that's what they pay him. Katoa and Militalo are not going to be great forever. They're both in their late 20s now. Anyway, I think that like I think you did well. Like I feel like I'm kind of content, like in the sense that like I went really flat with it, right? Like I didn't look for anything outlandish. I just looked for the outlandish things I did were like the two rookies.
Yes.
But aside from the two rookies, it's like everybody else there is somebody who, if called upon to play first grade, I'm comfortable will do a good job. Sione Fainu and Tim Johansson are two players who I think are extremely progressive. I could see both of those guys fighting their way into the top 17 very easily in 2025. So to upgrade them for 2026 seems a no-brainer. Like for me, looking at Charlie Staines is like you were talking about how slim the pickings are out there in the market. We got Charlie Staines at the club already. He's not going to cost a fortune. He's got a lot of experience. He's got experience playing with Jerome Luai, a lot of experience playing Jerome Luai, like a lot. And so like I have no issues with Charlie Staines being, in the back third of the roster. I'm content. I think you did well. At the end of the day, the problem with the Tigers right now is that I think that we have three players probably, two players really, that we have signed long term that are not showing promising signs of like deserving that. Like I'm talking about Kit and Sol.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind Kit and Sol being signed for 2025. You know what I mean? Like if this is their year, they don't freaking shape up, then see ya, move on to the next batch of rookies that are coming through. Always having two players like that on the roster is cool.
Yeah.
Because then you can just move on to the next two best juniors instead of having to funnel those juniors through the development program. You can, fast track one or two of them that really looks the goods. Because every year it's going to happen. Like every year we're going to unearth a junior or two who's going to play first grade, who started the year in the junior system.
Yeah.
And, we need to be able to accommodate those guys into the top 30 if they deserve it. And where we're at right now is that those guys were Tim Johansson and Sione Fainu, and we're unable to do so because we've stacked the roster with long-term contracts of junior players that don't deserve it. Like the policy should be, if we're going to give rookies top 30 deals, they should only be 1 year. You know what I mean? 1 year,
Yeah.
top 30 deals, except for like, on absolute freaks like Galvin. That's the conception.
I'm of the opinion that they kind of look. I'm sure that you're predicting that these blokes will earn it and they will make an irrepressible case. I just think that we have overpromised to these youngsters, as you mentioned, your Kits and your Follettis and your Sakurus too much, and that they need to climb the path, in the right manner. That they conquer SG ball and then they go to flag and they rip that, and then they make their way into cup, and then they get an NRL preseason and either a cup contract with a development deal after it, or a development deal with the top 30 after it, or a straight out development. That's what I think. As you said, there's always going to be out and out freaks. I get it. I have a lot of shares in Duncan. I think he's a great player, and I drafted him a fortnight ago. And I know how high you are on Brooks. It's just obviously that's my thing. But at the same time, your decision making around youngsters and your judge of talent, your eye for it has been excellent. You called Lachlan Galvin from way out to storm into the 6 jersey. So I completely understand where you're coming from and respect you as a general manager in that respect. I want to ask you one thing. I gave you these valuations, right? And they could be wrong, but I don't think they're too far off. You look at our cap for 2026, and it doesn't look, I don't think the rebuild's too far away from being complete, but you can't really get in, another match winner, I think. Where do you think it's at?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can. We have to, though. Like, no club. I don't think any NRL clubs are ever going to win the premiership when their second highest paid player is Jerome Buller.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if Buller becomes like his full form, then he's maybe a $900,000 player, and then maybe like when your second highest paid player is 690K, then you're still talent deficient. Like there should be 3 players on this roster over 800, I think. If it was like really going to be, and Galvin will be one of them, of course. And maybe the other one is Samuel Fainu, maybe. But like right now, I mean, I guess we're getting good value out of Coruscant. That could be something I'm overlooking a little bit.
My argument with it all is that a lot of these guys are on the up because they're so young. Jareen was discovered at 21, but in terms of his NRL career, he's, effectively where an 18 or 19-year-old is. Lockie is absolutely going to get an upgrade, but we've done incredibly well to get him at that price. Samuela looks a bargain too. Mussy looks a bargain as well. I think Terrell May is the leader of your forward pack, and Fanua Bole, who's one of the best young forwards in the comp. I think that's good value as well. But as I say, we keep talking about it. We're probably 1 or 2 absolute studs away. And I don't think that we have the cash at the moment to do it. But what I will say is,
but when you get to that point, Reedie, like the thing is that you have no choice but to have like the bottom 5 players on your roster being on min wage and being developmental.
Well, that's where I'm at, and I completely agree with you. At the end of 26, you have guys like Jack Bird, Uppy Coruscant, Justin Olam's coming off contract. Startoa comes off contract. So there's going to be a little bit more wiggle room for 27. But like I look at this now, when everybody says that 2026 will be the year of the title tilt, I hope that we do swing at it, because it's going to be Uppy's last year and a couple of other guys that'll be last chance saloon. But I just look at it and I just think, in terms of the way that the roster is shaped and the way that it is built, that we're still a little way off, unless, similar to what you said, we do find a way to move somebody on and find some value somewhere.
Well, look, I mean, by 2026, there's 5 guys, I think, on the roster who, if we're going to really be premiership contending, need to be either still at their best, or they need to develop only on the curve that they look like they're developing on, right? There just needs to be no developmental regression. Those 5 names are Jerome Luai, Api Coruscant, Samuel Afinu, Lachlan Galvin, and Hiamasi Marcassini.
Yeah.
Like, if Hiamasi Marcassini gets blooded in 2025, and by the end of 2026 has played a full season in first grade of 2026, so by the final series of 2026 he's played 35 first grade games. He could be anything. And when you also have Galvin at that point, where he'll have played 50 first grade games by that point, Samuel Afinu have played over 50 first grade games at that point. Those guys could very well be enough with a solid roster around them. And that's what I think that's what we're going to have to rely on. Because I don't think that our salary cap's built for us to make any more outlandish signings. So, but if we're gonna hang our hats on a 2026 premiership tilt behind 3 prodigious rookies, I would pick those 3.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of players that haven't hit their ceiling yet, so you don't know where they're going to be at. And maybe you're right that the money post 26 is just going to be soaked up by these guys. Obviously, Talon's going to be in line for an upgrade. Lockie, obviously already spoke about. Samuela will command more cash. Musi, I think, is probably on good cash for where he's at the moment. Fanua Bole, I think, has done really well. I think he's positioned himself for the expansion clubs to use as leverage. I think he'll be in line for a pay rise. Tim Johansson will likely be in line for a pay rise. So
I have Johansson. I've got my 2026 top 17 out of this roster drafted, and he's my lock.
Very nice.
I've got
there's guys that are going to grow into their value. So it's too early to make predictions, but I just think our cap is tight in 2026. And for people who are anticipating Selwyn Cobbo, Katoni Staggs, Teague Wilton, Kai Pearce-Paul, these sorts of guys, we don't have the money.
I think that
we don't have the cash.
The next 2 years, at least, the next 2 off seasons, not including this one, we're not going to do much. I think that it'll be opportunistic, if anything. What we need to do is we desperately need to make sure that Luke Lololii, Jareen Buller, Hiamasi Marcassini, Lachlan Galvin, Bonu Bole, Samuel Afinu, those core guys become very good first graders. If those core guys can become very good first graders, then you can move off of the likes of a Justin Olam at 400K, and then you can plug and play a 250K defensively minded center. Yep. You can move on from Sunia Taruva, and you can play a younger, freakish winger who's on the come up that might not in the current roster fit because he'd be too much of a weakness in the roster.
Tom Goodfield.
You know what I mean? That's the thing. So, and you give them 2 years. You give Luke Lololii, Hiamasi Marcassini, Fonua Bole's 2-year upgrade. Samuel Afinu's off contract in 2 more seasons. It's all lined up that way. I think the plan is now locked in place. It's built around ensuring that we do as much as we can to make sure that these guys maximize their potential. And if they don't, then we die with them and we reload into off seasons.
That's right. And that falls on the coach,
Yeah.
which might be our next episode.
I
Shout out Jolsey, Ken Benji coach. Mate, I think
it's a good team. I really do. Like I think Marcassini is an undeniable talent. Like he's going to be a hit. Galvin's Galvin. I'm confident. I really do think that. Do I think that they could win the premiership in 2026? I don't know. Probably not. Do I think they can make the 8 in 2025? Yes. Yes. I think that like premiership is maybe like 2027.
Yeah, I think so too. One thing that I haven't touched on is the fact that there'll be a few more juniors that'll begin to poke their heads through these first-year SG ball guys. So Christian Torpau-Moores,
Phoenix,
Archie, as you mentioned, those sorts of guys, and a lot of those guys are where you get a lot of value. So
yeah, I think that's what I was going to mention before is like now that we've kind of got the junior development players that are like the precocious ones in the top 30 that are gonna stay in the top 30 for the next couple of seasons. All of these other talented kids that probably in the past 5 years might have found their way into the top 32 young are going to actually be now forced to have a more slow and logical development, and they'll play out a couple of seasons of flag and stuff like that. So by the time you see them in the first grade team, they'll be 22, they'll be 20, 21, 22, and they'll perform better for it. So I think that it's good for the club in the long term.
I hear that, mate. I certainly hear that. All right. Anything else you want to touch on, or are we done for the day?
The only other thing I would probably say is that Logan Brooks, man, he's going to supplant Buller.
You are obsessed with this young man. You're going to have to come down for SG ball and watch him in the flesh, I think.
Bro, like he's... you ever play international cricket, Captain?
No, I didn't. But
it's one of those like team management sims.
I played a lot of Football Manager in my time.
Yeah, like that.
That's my shit.
One. And like it's always funny because like all the name generated players that like because you play, I remember playing until like the season 2070, like I've played it out like the county cricket to that degree. And like it just recycles names. You got like Stephen Border and like just recycles like Tim Warne, like just famous play. That's what Logan Brooks is, man. He's like he's Neo. He's like this little dude who just manifested out of nowhere. He's not real. He's just a simulated entity that manifested up in Townsville or wherever the hell he's from, Cowan State High School, bringing together two great football names. He's gonna be insane. He's the chosen one, bro.
All right, mate.
He's the chosen one.
I didn't doubt young Galvin. Let's wait and see with young Logs.
Oh, watch him jet.
Anywho, been good. See you guys. Bye.